That's weird. I don't remember it raining when I signed off last, but that was a while ago. Actually, I'm recording my commentary for this particular episode about a month after this footage was recorded, too. I have made other videos between now and then, which you can feel free to check out. I'll put a link to the playlist on this video's end screen. Regardless, the upcoming 1.18 update is rapidly approaching. That in turn means that the window of time for me to get to the end is rapidly closing. I mean, I still have time, but I also know that I have a tendency to procrastinate, so I have to account for that as well. Anyway, my inventory was almost entirely full, so I decided I'd have to set down another map barrel soon. I was also running out of compasses and other map materials. It was time for me to find another location to temporarily settle down. It was quite rainy, but a flower forest seemed like a fitting place for my team to call home, even if it was only temporary. I spotted this small cave in the side of the mountain nearby. Surely it would have a good view of the surrounding flora. There were also a few caves in the area to help replenish my stock of compasses. To the west, there was a vast ocean. I wasn't sure I felt like trying to deal with maps in the middle of the ocean, so that settled the matter. I returned to the mountain I spotted earlier with the small cave. There was a waterfall on the other side which I could expand. I could even add a pond at the bottom. I could also fill in the back of the mountain with some blue stained glass to keep the interior dry. I returned to the side of the mountain facing the flower fields to place down a map barrel. I then leashed up Daisy to keep her safe, and started fishing because I refused to let a good rainstorm go to waste. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. However, I did get a name tag, so I was able to name Allium. I still needed name tags for Barry and the other cat, as well as a name for the other cat. I would need more sugarcane for maps, so I took Daisy to see what the surrounding area had. I successfully acquired sugarcane, but then I found something even better. A village, and a decently sized one at that. I borrowed some crops to start my own garden back home. After all, crops equals emeralds equals diamond gear with mending. The village already had a librarian, but I would need to use my expert negotiation skills to get what I needed. I started terraforming near the base of the mountain because gardens are a lot easier to work with on level ground. I also made a little pond around the map barrel. You never know when you'll need an infinite water source. With night approaching, I decided to check out one of the caves in the mountain. It was disappointing. So, after closing that particular section off, I went to check out the large opening that had caught my attention in the first place. The inside wasn't as exciting as I was hoping, but there was definitely enough space for me to do something. I also really liked this lookout over the flowers. I'm not the only one who uses torch spam to deal with gravel ceilings, right? The waterfall would be a mess to deal with, but that was a problem for future me, and I was confident future me would figure it out. Eventually. In the meantime, then present me was going to figure out the pond for the base of the waterfall. With the outline done, I checked out the nearby caves. Both iron and redstone were near the top of my list. Copper too, though I didn't remember to set out my timing blocks until much later. I returned to the surface once I'd reached the end of that particular cave. I then happened upon some dandelions that had popped off during generation. Perhaps I would name the other cat Dandelion after all. I saw a donkey next. If I could get a mule, that would enable me to transport more items. However, I did want to take Daisy with me for the entire trip. The donkey wasn't tamed on the first try either, so I decided to shelve that idea. So I was back to caving. There I was, minding my business, getting some iron. What I heard an axolotl. After some technical difficulties, I finally got it in a bucket. I found it next to some subterranean tulips, which just so happened to be a similar color. Tulip the Axolotl. I thought it had a nice ring to it. Surely Tulip would enjoy the pond I was making at the base of the waterfall. So far I've been bringing all of my animals with me, but I'm not sure it's wise or responsible to bring a member of an endangered species with me on my journey to the end. But the pond would be perfectly safe. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, I found a mine shaft. After finding some more name tags and other resources, it was time to return home. I used one of the name tags on Tulip, repaired my pickaxe, waited for my iron to smelt, and returned to the village to engage in commerce. The local librarian still wasn't offering mending, so I tried using some gentle persuasion. To say the negotiations were not short would be an understatement. At one point, the librarian offered me Fortune 1. I briefly considered it before I remembered that I really only cared about having fortune on my pickaxe. Meanwhile, having mending on all of my gear would mean I wouldn't need to carry additional diamonds or iron with me just to repair or replace my gear. The librarian then began derailing the negotiations by first trying to go upstairs, and then by changing professions entirely. This simply would not do. I had no choice but to wield my advanced negotiation techniques. I was still getting nowhere with the librarian, so I took a break to trade with a local armorer. He would eventually sell diamond pants, so that was nice to know. But then it was right back to negotiations. I was offered fortune 2 a second time. Again, I was frustrated, so I went caving. I found another axolotl. I can't keep every animal I find, but Tulip needs a friend, right? Everybody needs a friend. I also found this geode, though I didn't look inside. I can't remember why. Feeling much happier from gathering resources, I returned to negotiating with the librarian. Finally! The first tool to get mending was my pickaxe. Oddly enough, the armorer was also selling a diamond helmet, with aqua affinity no less. It wasn't respiration, but I'd take it. Besides, I look good in blue. Shortly thereafter, I spotted this massive crater in the middle of the village. I managed to help one of the farmers escape to safety before descending into the cave myself. This village had been kind enough to sell me things after all. I found coal, iron, and copper in abundance. I then found a mine shaft. I'm guessing it's just another section of the one I found earlier, since that was just a couple hundred blocks away. And then I spotted them. The first diamonds for this world. It was a 5 vein, so I definitely have enough for a diamond pickaxe. And after 2 more minutes of investigating the mine shafts, I found more diamonds. It ended up only being 2, but that was still 2 more diamonds than I previously had. It was raining when I eventually returned to the surface, so of course I went fishing. Not sure why the items kept going to the side like that, though. Regardless, I got a few more books and name tags which would be useful. In fact, I put one of those name tags to use right away. At least Barry was properly named now. I stared into the other cat's eyes. Was it truly a dandelion? Yes. Yes, it was. I did some gardening while I planned my next moves. I wanted to get a complete set of diamond armor and tools while I was here, even build a home, but I couldn't stay too long. After all, anything could happen between now and 1.18's release. I finally remembered to set down some copper to roughly track how long I'd been here. Since I'd already been here for a few days, I just placed 2 right away. With that taken care of, I decided how to spend my 7 diamonds. I already had a shovel, so I figured the next most practical items were a pickaxe and an axe. After all, I will need more redstone and iron for maps for the journey. I'll also most likely need more wood for building. I combined 2 of the books I had collected to give my pickaxe Unbreaking 3 and Mending. I also upgraded my fishing rod from Lure 2 to Lure 3. RNG decided to be kind when I returned to trading with the villagers. The second armorer was selling diamond boots. They only had protection 1, so I'd need to buy 8 sets to get protection 4. But at least they were boots. And since this armorer was also selling a diamond chestplate, I'd be able to get a full suit of armor without using a single diamond. The real icing on the cake was seeing that the chestplate had thorns and unbreaking. I'd have to buy 4 to max out the thorns, though. In the meantime, I traded with the librarian to get mending on both my diamond axe and shovel. Afterwards, I made the axolotl pond at the base of the waterfall deeper. They have a habit of leaving the water if they aren't prevented from doing so. I also needed more emeralds, and I figured the best way to get them would be to sell crops to the farmers. However, I needed to spend time around the base if I wanted the crops to grow, so this seemed like the best use of my time. With the pond now dug out, it was time to introduce Tulip and Not Tulip to their new home. However, I realized at this point I probably should have made sure all of the blocks in the pond were water source blocks. It took a little longer than I would have liked, but they seemed happy, other than the fact that they stayed directly under the waterfall. Now that Tulip and Not Tulip were no longer taking up my buckets, I tried adding a small pond next to the oak tree and copper blocks. I will need more sugarcane for maps before I leave, and growing those requires water. Afterwards, the potatoes were ready for harvest. My plan had somewhat worked, at least. I returned to the caves again after some more trading. I was mining gold when some fell into running water. I tried to get to the gold before it was burnt in lava, but alas, I was too slow. But I found more diamonds. I wasn't entirely sure what I would do with the 8 additional diamonds, but they were nice to have. And after another 10 minutes of mining coal and other ores, I fell down and found more diamonds. So that was another 4, bringing the total for this session up to 12. And then, about 5 minutes after that, I spotted even more of the cyan rock. There ended up being 6 of them, making the total 18. Again, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these since I'm able to get a full suit of armor from the village, and I already have most of the tools. But I'm sure I'll think of something. Maybe some backup tools? Though that might be pointless since I already have access to mending. Regardless, the extra diamonds were nice to have. And I still need to mine iron and redstone for more compasses for maps, so I might as well grab whatever diamonds I find. I think next time I sit down to play, I'll focus a little more on trading with the villagers and building my second temporary base. As I mentioned earlier, I made a playlist of videos where I speculate about what features could be coming to Minecraft. But if that doesn't interest you, I'll post the next episode of this series on the end screen once it's ready. Until next time, take care.